BooktokgalJordyn or on Bookstagram as BookstaGalJordyn. And welcome back to my booktube. Today we're going to be going over my March TBR. I'm going to be showing you guys what books I read, what I rated them, and of course the mood boards. Let's get into it. I read a total of 7 books and I listened to 1. Starting off strong, I read The Do-Over by our girl Lynn Painter. Here is the mood board I made for this book, and I rated this book 4 stars. Can we talk about how cute these sprayed edges are? So after living through a dumpster fire, Emily goes to her grandmother's house for some much needed girl talk. But then she passes out on her grandmother's couch and wakes back up in her bed the next morning somehow. Somehow it's Valentine's Day again. And she's stuck in a time loop, and every day she wakes up and it's Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day. So she basically has to rewatch her boyfriend Josh cheat on her, and she keeps running into this guy Nick, and not in the best way. So she basically has to figure out a way to get out of this time loop. Every day teaches her a lesson and she does different things. I just found that so freaking interesting. And of course, we love a good cartoon cover. Next, I read Only Say Good Things by Crystal Hefner, and I gave this book 5 stars. This is her story on how she met Hugh Hefner, what it was like living with him. One thing I really enjoyed about this book was how she talks about her dad and how she was really close with him. Please read trigger warnings before reading this book. When I tell you I zoomed through this book, I literally read it in one night because I honestly found her story super fascinating. Next, I read Air of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. Here is the mood board I made for this book, and I rated it 4 stars. I love the action, the adventure. One thing I love about Selena and her character is that she is always one step ahead of you. She knows what the hell's going on, and she knows how to get herself just through the worst times. And I love her strength. Seriously, you guys, if you have not read any of Sarah J. Maas's books, this is your sign to start, because shout out to my best friend Gabby for getting me hooked on her books. I feel like Sarah J. Maas's books really are a good introduction to get you into fantasy if you're not a fantasy reader. Her world building is super easy to understand. I could go on for hours about this, and I cannot wait to finish this series. Please comment down below if you guys want me to film myself finishing the rest of these books in this series and then kind of giving a rundown at the end. Next, I listened to A Stolen Life by J.C. Dugard. This is a story about J.C. Dugard, and when she was kidnapped at 11 years old, she tells everything that happened to her while she was in captivity. Please, please, please read the trigger warnings before you read this book because it is intense and it is a real story. Her bravery and courage was truly inspiring. I gave this book 5 stars. Next, I read Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Here's the mood board I created for this book, and I rated this book 4 stars. This is a book about a girl named Elsie Porter. She falls in love with a man named Ben Ross. Their chemistry is electric, they're in love, and they elope. And then 9 days later, Ben is out riding his bike and he gets hit by a truck and is killed on impact. When Ben is whisked away to the hospital, Elsie obviously goes there, and all of a sudden her mother-in-law, who she has not met yet, shows up. This story basically just goes through Elsie's grieving process with Ben's mother, Susan, and I honestly quite enjoyed this book. I love how this book showed the past and the present. Next, I read Lessons in Chemistry. Here is the mood board I made for this book, and you guys, I rated this book 5 stars. I love Elizabeth Zott, okay? She is my new personality. This is about Elizabeth Zott, our main character. She is a chemist. She is a chemist at Hastings Research Institute, and they don't treat her the same like they do the men at Hastings, which is so infuriating. Hastings is where she meets Calvin Evans. Ooh, don't even get me started right now. A few years later, Elizabeth is the star of a TV show called Supper at 6, and she's a single mother, and it just shows what she has to go through to get to where she's at in the end, and it's seriously so inspiring. This book honestly made me realize, like, I can do anything, and I'm not gonna let anybody tell me what I can and cannot do. I will never shut up about this book, ever. Next, I read Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. Here is the mood board I created for this book, and I rated this book 3.5 stars. It was just a cute, fast-paced romance book, and if you want to see me read this book and my full thoughts on it, I did a 24-hour readathon in my previous video, so you can go check that out. This is about Sophie Steinbeck, and she's about to walk down the aisle, and she's like, dude, I do not want to marry this man. And shout out to Max, who stands up during Sophie's wedding and says, I object. Max's job is to go to different weddings and object them and say the whole truth. So for example, let's just say we have a random person and we know that her husband is cheating on her, and Max kind of gets all the tea on the cheater or whoever did the other person wrong, if that makes sense, and goes to their wedding and objects them and just says like, hey, so-and-so's cheating on you, like you shouldn't marry them, and I have the proof. And Sophie wants to be a part of it. So they kind of start hanging out a little bit. We got a little bit of like a fake friendship, fake dating trope going on. And finally, I read The Housemade Secret. You know I had to read a little Frida McFadden. If you don't know, she is my fave. Here is the mood board I created for this book. I rated this book 4.5 stars. I absolutely loved this book more than the first one. I honestly thought that this book was like the first book continued, if that makes sense. So that's why it's taken me so long to pick it up and read it. I also read this book during my 24-hour readathon video, so if you want to see my full thoughts on it, go check out my previous video. This is a story about a girl named Millie, and she cooks and cleans for rich people, and one day a man named Mr. Garrick, who is like a millionaire, reaches out to her and says, hey girlie, I want you to come clean my house, cook me dinner every night, but my wife is upstairs, she's very ill, don't knock on her door, don't disturb her. She goes over there, she doesn't see Mrs. Garrick, she hears her crying, and then one day she's doing laundry and she notices blood on one of her nightgowns, I believe. She's like, screw it, I need to make sure Mrs. Garrick is okay. So when she knocks on the door, Mrs. Garrick opens the door, and what Millie sees is going to change everything. Oh my gosh, this was crazy. Like, you think you know what it's about? Guess again, because Frida McFadden switched up on us. Oh my gosh, this was so good. Okay, you guys, that was my March wrap up. Please comment down below what other kind of bookish videos you would like to see me post. And as always, please like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Love you guys.